Hi, hello. I am Charisse, and I like to share the creepy books that I read each month. So, this is going to be a recap for the month of July. Grab yourself a beverage and get cozy, and let's jump right into it. July was actually a pretty light reading month. I only have three books to share with you. And the first one is From Below by Darcy Coates. So, this month I was trying to stick with kind of more summer themed books. And so I went with one that takes place under the water. The book follows a documentary film crew that is going to the location of a recently discovered wreck. So the SS Arcadia was a ship that lost communication, veered off course. Nobody knew what happened to it. And there has been so much speculation and, what actually happened to this ship. And recently the wreckage had been discovered. So the film crew goes. It's a film crew. It's Cove. She's the host of the show, of the documentary. They have a dive specialist. It's a whole little team, and they're on a boat and they anchor. And they are going to be there for a few days to dive and get footage. The thing is that this shipwreck is extremely deep underwater, so deep that they have to have special oxygen in their tanks. They have to take a bunch of precautions. It's slow to rise. They have to take time to rise out of the water so they don't get the bends. If you've got a fear of drowning, if you've got a fear of the open sea, if you've got a claustrophobia fear, if you are afraid of the dark, if you're afraid of ghosts, all of these elements are in this book. This book made me so uneasy in the best way. I did read some reviews after I finished the book. Some people thought it was way too slow paced and way too boring and kind of repetitive. And I can see maybe where people think that, but not for me. I thought it was paced really well. Anytime that I was reading when they were diving and they were inside this ship, I just was like, ooh, like so uncomfortable because of the small spaces and the oxygen and the darkness and this like totally played into so many of my personal fears, and it was great. The book does flip-flop between present day and 1928, so we do get to read about the divers and the documentary film crew and what they are going through and experiencing, and then the next chapter is insight into what actually did happen on the SS Arcadia. And so it's interesting to kind of see the correlations and what actually did happen. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I found myself holding my breath at a couple times, and I was kind of sad that it was over when it was. I think this would make a really great movie as well. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe it will become a movie eventually because it was really, really enjoyable. The next book I read was Murder Road by Simone St. James. And this book takes place in July 1995. So, absolutely a great summer book. The book also did a really good job of giving you that summer feeling, that like sweaty, humid, sunny summer energy, that summer vibe, that summer setting. I really liked that. It was also good at conveying that it was set in the 90s without like hammering it home that it was in the 90s. It was like, okay, we know that it's in the 90s and it's not like overpowering the story though. This book definitely did feel a little bit more murder mystery thriller rather than a true horror book. But I guess, horror is really subjective. The book follows a pair of newlyweds that are on their way to their honeymoon. And they're driving on this deserted road in the middle of the night, and they come across a female hitchhiking. And they're like, we can't just leave her. So they bring her into the car and they're going to take her wherever she needs to go. And then they realize that she has been stabbed and she's bleeding. Next thing they know, there's headlights behind them and a truck trying to run them off the road. They end up getting the hitchhiker, and this isn't spoilers, by the way. They get the hitchhiker to the hospital, and then the police come. And now these newlyweds are the newest suspects to to the murder of this girl. And now they're also number one suspects for all of the other unsolved disappearances and murders of hitchhikers along this road. This book was a fun, easy read. I did kind of figure out the twist about halfway through, so that was kind of a bummer, but it was still an entertaining read. There were also a couple of surprise moments and really entertaining moments. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great. to me, it was missing. I thought it was going to be a little bit more ghostly than it was. So it was kind of missing that paranormal element. I mean, it was definitely still there, but it wasn't heavily focused on the paranormal ghostly. It was definitely more like true crime focused, which isn't bad. I did enjoy it. It was an easy read. If you're looking for a summer themed creepy book to read, check it out. Check out Murder Road. And then finally, I have My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I didn't even finish. So, yeah, God. Okay, I've seen so many people talk about this book, Grady Hendrix, My Best Friend's Exorcism. So many people have been like, this is a great book. It's amazing. I love it. It's my favorite book I've ever read. I couldn't finish it. So kind of like how I was talking about in Murder Road, it was set in the 90s and you got that it was set in the 90s. There were enough little things written in to make you to remind you that okay, this is set in the 90s, but it wasn't like every other freaking sentence or paragraph was like throwing some sort of like look, this is taking place in the 90s. This is in the 90s. And that's what happened in My Best Friend's Exorcism. The first, chapter that I read, maybe I was like, "Oh, this is fun. It's the 80s. This is great." And then I was like, "Oh my god, we get it. Like this is taking place in the 80s. Like god, move on." There were a bunch of details and stuff too, which I thought were kind of pointless. I can see how some people reading it would love all of the like super specific details of like the character's outfit that she's wearing or the decorations in her bedroom. Like some people may really like that, but I just felt like it was just so much fluff and absolutely unneeded to really put yourself in these scenes. Like we don't need there's too much of a good thing sometimes, and we don't need so many details. It kind of then just starts to take away the story. In case you have never heard of this, it is this book. It follows two best friends and a couple of their other friends, and one of them gets possessed, and that's it. It takes place in the 80s in Charleston, South Carolina, and yeah, like what do we do? My best friend is possessed. I then, while I was reading and was like, I need to stop watching this or reading this, I was like, this would have made a pretty good movie. And then I found out that it was a movie, so I watched the movie instead of finishing the book. Um, and I heard that the movie is pretty darn similar to the book, so I don't feel like I missed out anything on the book. Unfortunately, this was my first Grady Hendrix book, and I don't know, I kind of don't want to read anymore. So if you have a Grady Hendrix book that is not My Best Friend's Exorcism that you think is good, please recommend it to me because as of right now, I have not much of an interest to read any Grady Hendrix. And I'm just so bummed, man, because this book could have been so good, but it just was so not. It was not good. Anyway, those are my books for the month of July. Let me know, what are you reading? Do you have any book recommendations on things that I should be reading? Yeah, talk to you later.